Hello, this is Socially Triggered, and this video is going to be on socialism versus capitalism. And this man that you can see on the screen right now is Richard Wolff. He's actually a very famous socialist. He teaches actually at the University of Massachusetts. He teaches economics, which is insane that they allow a socialist to teach economics because socialists don't really understand economics. So it's kind of funny. But in this video, he gives three criticisms about capitalism, and he goes into a fairly long explanation. I won't play the explanation. I'm just going to show you him speaking about quickly the 3 points of what his criticisms of capitalism are, and I'm going to respond to it and give you an understanding of how those criticisms are not really flaws with capitalism, but are actually the hallmarks of what makes capitalism great. So I'm going to play this short clip so it won't hopefully get flagged as copyright infringement. I'm responding to a video. Please understand that, YouTube gods. It's just a response video. Okay, so let's listen to what his 3 points were.
That's what socialism is. Beyond that, socialists agree about three flaws, failures of capitalism. And again, briefly, to go through them. But there are three. Capitalism is unstable. Capitalism is unequal. And capitalism is fundamentally undemocratic. Let me briefly.
So let's go through those 3 points. So his 3 points about the flaws of capitalism as he sees them are that it's unstable, it's a not stable process, whole economic system. That's one issue. And the second one is that capitalism is unequal, that the people within it don't get equal treatment. And then the last one is that it's undemocratic. Now, personally, I see these three things as being benefits. So one is stability in economics. If you think about it, he kind of makes the wrong assumption about stability in economics. But what we think of as stability within a business is businesses come and go, and there is no stability within capitalism. And the reason for that is businesses that do not innovate, do not progress, do not improve themselves, or do not provide things that consumers want, they go out of business. Or if they do things that are bad practices, they go out of business. Now, that creates instability. Yes, people lose their jobs, things go wrong. However, it is just like when a virus hits a population. The population suffers. They get sick, they die, bad things happen. However, afterwards, they get stronger because the ones that are remaining are stronger for it. They're resistant to that virus. They live. And that's a terrible analogy, but the point I'm trying to make is that when businesses fail, it hurts. Yes, it hurts. But the result is stronger businesses, more innovative businesses that are going to be more resistant. And that's the way capitalism is great. It's an evolving system that's constantly improving. We wouldn't, like, if it was super stable, just imagine if capitalism was a super stable system. And what would happen is you have a whole bunch of businesses. The only way that they could remain stable is if they had a monopoly, where there was no way that they could go out of business. Because if they go out of business, well, that creates instability. And the only way to achieve that kind of monopoly impact is through socialism. If you create a government-controlled business, there's nothing, and there's no choice, you only have the government, well, that creates stability, but at the same time, what it does is it creates lack of choice. And it creates businesses that are, these propped up monopolies that you can't, you can't say, well, hey, I don't like this service. I don't like what I'm getting from this company. You're stuck with it. You have no choice. So that instability of capitalism is actually the beauty of it, because it gives you choice. If you don't like it, you go somewhere else. And if companies don't give you what you want, they go out of business. And that's what makes capitalism so wonderful, because it's constantly forcing businesses to give people what they want and to constantly improve. And that's the genius of it. Like, a good example of how instability versus stability is a good thing was when there was the phone monopoly. The government said, hey, we gotta break up Bell and we gotta control it so that it's regulated. It's going to be under the government's kind of control. It's a utility now. And what happened was there was no innovation, because there was no incentive to innovate, because it was a controlled thing. They could only charge a certain fee that the government controlled. It was fairly expensive to do anything. I remember like calling long distance to my girlfriend, and it was like $30 for like a 5-minute call. It was insane. But once they got rid of those regulations, once they brought back instability into the system and allowed other companies to compete and threaten the market and change the market, what happened was huge amounts of innovation. We had the cell phone generation. We had things changing very rapidly. Prices became much cheaper. And also there was more jobs created. It was a thing where through instability, actually more jobs were created, better jobs were created, and actually things got better for the majority of people. So I actually love instability. That's why if you really understand economics, which Richard Wolff doesn't, you would understand that instability is a good thing within economics and within capitalism. So that was his first point. Now the second point is he said it was unequal. Well, one of the things that socialists want is they want everybody to be equal. And if you watch any of my videos, I'm always going against equality. I hate equality. I really don't like equality, because I don't believe people are equal. We're all different, and that's a good thing. We have different interests, we have different dreams, we have different drives that push us to do things, and we all have different expectations. Now, some people are lazy, and that's just a fact. I get lazy sometimes, and I always have to motivate myself. And that's just life, that people are lazy and they just don't want to work. And then you get other people who are totally driven and want to, get every ounce or every drop out of life. And they push themselves, they come up with brilliant ideas, and they really motivate themselves to do amazing things. Now, those two people, the lazy person that doesn't want to work and the one that works super hard, should they have the same outcomes? No. And if you reward people by giving those two groups the same outcome, then the person that was once motivated will become unmotivated, because there's no benefit. So I love the fact that under capitalism, it breeds inequality. It actually does create a system where there is great wealth inequality. However, in that same system where there's huge amounts of inequality, it actually lifts the majority of people up. If you look at like the United States, it is actually one of the countries with the highest levels of wealth inequality. There's super, super, super rich people, and there's poor people. Now, the difference though is if you look at like places like Venezuela, where there's like high levels of equality, and it's a very socialist state, what ends up happening is everybody's starving, everybody's poor, and except for maybe the few at the top that are really controlling everything. But the point is, majority of people are poor. Now, personally, I look at the whole system, and I say, well, if you look at the United States, the poorest Americans, the very poorest Americans are still better off than most of the people on the planet. And that's the kind of awesomeness that you get with capitalism. Yes, there is inequality, but if the poorest people are better off in that state, who cares if there's inequality? I care about how everybody's doing in that society. And if people are, for the most part, doing better than they would in some other society, like a socialist society, then I don't care that there's inequality. I don't care that somebody's richer than me. If I'm doing better because I'm in a society that fosters that kind of innovation and motivation and work ethic, then I'm fine. I'm fine with somebody else making 10 or a million times more than me. I don't care, because I'm satisfied that I'm doing better. And I think most people do better under a capitalist system. So inequality doesn't mean anything. Now the last one was the most interesting, democratic. He said that under capitalism it is undemocratic. And actually I think he's right. So I'm actually agreeing with all 3 points of his. I'm agreeing with the socialist. I'm saying he's right about the fact that it's instable, it's not stable. I agree that it's unequal, and I also agree that it's undemocratic. Now, the reason I don't mind the fact that it's undemocratic is if you look at a democracy, it means that everybody has the same voting power. And if you think about that, well, what it is mob rule. If everybody has the right to control the society, equal power, then you will get mob rule, where the minorities within the group will be the ones who will suffer. And the minorities also could be the ones who produce the most for societies. If you look at like Canada, United States, the top 20% of the people, the earnings of those people, pay 80% of the taxes. Now, if the bottom percentage of people who get the most benefits from government, most things from government, had control over the top 20%, well, then they're just going to be like, hey, let's just suck them dry. Let's increase the taxes because we're not paying them anyways. Let's just burden them with everything we can, make them slaves to us. And you'll actually see a lot of socialists, like even like the Democrats in the US, they will promote that. They'll say, well, we should have a wealth tax, we should have this tax, we should have whatever. And most people within a democracy will agree with that, because if they're not the ones that are feeling the pinch of those taxes, it's somebody else's money. I don't, it's one of those things, like if you feel like, hey, it's somebody else's money, who cares? I don't mind if we take all their money because it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt me directly. That's the way people think. And so a democracy can be super dangerous if you think about it, because basically you get a mob rule where people are making decisions based on their own needs rather than the needs of the society. And it can be a bit of a nightmare. So democracy has to be balanced. And the way you balance a democracy is you have protection of rights, protection of freedoms, protection of property, and you create those things that actually unbalance or make things in some ways undemocratic. And you protect the very people within that democracy. So the funny thing is, they always talk about US being a democracy. It is not a democracy. It's actually a republic, and it's a different political system. But the point of the republic is that it protects the rule of law and certain aspects that protect all of the people within the society over what the decisions of a majority of people would want. So, and there's representation of those people. So those things make it not a democracy, but a representational government and a government which is a republic. So those things are important to understand, that we don't want 100% democracy. It sounds kind of weird to say that, where it'd be really great if everyone had the equal right to vote, but I don't really see that as being true. Maybe for the same reasons that I said that it's unequal system, that I don't believe everybody should have the equal say within society, because I don't believe people are equally able to make those decisions. I'm a bit of an elitist on this, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I do believe that there's people that can make better decisions than other people. And because of that, I'm sort of biased towards the fact that we should have a government that protects basic rights of people, but doesn't try to leverage mob rule or the majority of people. And actually, some of the failings of our society in Canada is the fact that it is a democracy, and that what they do is they ignore the majority of people in Canada, actually, in a way. And what they'll do is they'll actually bring in votes through immigration or other things, where they actually will manipulate, and a democracy can be manipulated, where you can basically control the votes of people. In the case of Canada, we also bribe the lower income people to vote a certain way. So you'll notice, like, usually that's one thing the Democrats will do, or in Canada it's like the Liberals or the NDP. What they'll do is they'll say, we'll spend all this taxpayer money and get your votes. We'll bribe you all day long with goodies from the government. And they do that, and they will get the majority of the vote. And that's the failing of democracy. That if it's always this kind of unequal system of the majority of people paying very little taxes, and only the small 20% at the top paying majority of the taxes, well, you're always going to be able to bribe the majority of people by saying, hey, we're going to spend other people's money, but we'll buy your vote. And that's the real failing of democracy. So I agree. I actually would like capitalism not to be a democracy. And that doesn't mean that I don't believe people have the right to vote or anything like that. I just believe that we have to balance that with protecting people's freedoms. And also, I see taxation as being fairly unfair in that respect. So these have been my ways of addressing Richard Wolff's 3 failings of capitalism. I hope you enjoyed it. I recommend you watch the debate that this is taken from, where he gets into the full explanation. And his explanation, he just immediately goes off the rails, but in my opinion. But it's worthy of watching. I always believe you should watch your enemies so that you understand them, and then you can defend yourself against them. So yeah, I see socialism as my enemy. So hope you enjoyed. Please give me a like, subscribe, all that wonderful stuff, and see you in the next video.